And I want to bring in, we were waiting to talk to Mark Murphy, our travel expert, on some other things here, but this is a perfect opportunity to talk to you about something like this and perhaps what passengers can do as we wait to hear from Chris Van Cleve exactly what the FAA and what United Airlines is saying. So thanks for joining us.
No, great to be here.
So this is not, is this something that happens fairly often? Probably not, right?
No, very unusual. And so, and you all hit it on the head, which is it's not just the people that are delayed right now. Right. This could go on for 48 hours, 72 hours, because all of these planes have been backed up. So now all of those people that are on those future flights, that plane's supposed to be in London in 8 hours.
Right.
It's not going to be there. So they have to hold planes, reroute planes. People are going to be stuck. You'll have a recourse. If you have a good travel agent, what they would probably have done by now is rebooked you on a different flight, especially if you're a business traveler in a different airline, so you could get on your way. If you're
But
not,
you wouldn't be able to do that at United kiosk. You'd
you'd be booking
to another.
You'd be booking a last-minute, high-priced fare typically on another carrier to get out of town to make your business meeting. If you're there for leisure travel, you're just going to be disrupted for a couple of days. That's where travel insurance comes in and can protect you in that regard and maybe help you recoup some of that lost money in terms of that hotel stay, or you might miss that cruise departure right now on your leisure trip. So think about all the things that get affected.
Yeah.
I mean, all of United.
Yeah, right. That's not just that airport or one or two airports.
They're kind of big because, we're down to those 4 carriers. Anything goes on with one of them, we're stuck.
Right.
And so let me ask you, though, about just traffic. As they start to get these planes moving again, what does that do? Does that have the potential to disrupt passengers who are on other airlines' flights?
Not so much, because those are already scheduled in. They've got their gates, they've got their landing slots, et cetera. It's going to be the challenge for United to work its way back in, but the FAA and the air traffic control people will do that. But again, you're trying to push people into really a lot of missed flights.
So I'm curious, Mark. In a situation like this, you know that if a flight takes off and it's late, they can't get to their gate. They have to sometimes circle. Right. That could be a possibility.
Oh,
as well,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So, and planes typically are trying to carry as little fuel as possible, right? So that they're not carrying that extra weight. It makes the plane more efficient, and it's cheaper to fly that way, which means you can't hold forever in the air. So you may find yourself being redirected potentially. There's all sorts of things. This is Pandora's box. We see it with the weather, as your reporter mentioned. We see it with this type of glitch in terms of software, mechanical issues. There's a host of things, but many of them are just isolated. Since this is globally with United, this is a big deal.
I wanted to ask, though, more about this reservation system, because even though these instances are rare, it would seem that there should be some kind of backup system in place or some kind of redundancy built in.
I thought it was a hamster on one of those habit trails.
Sometimes it feels like that.
I mean, is there not? I mean, when you talk about a glitch this
Well, they have
wide,
redundancies, but, I own a technology business in media, and we have it. We have outages, and our users are complaining, and things just happen. You just have to get on it quickly and try to fix it. Nothing's perfect, and you're going to have issues when it comes to technology. The key thing with the technology on the plane, make sure the plane stays in the air, make sure it goes, and we know where the planes are. That's the air traffic control system. Those are the types of things that you really want to worry about. The fact that you can't get your boarding pass and get off on time because the reservation system is down, that's okay. I'll sit back. I'll miss a day or two, but I just want to get to my destination. And it was great to hear the passenger talking about the United employees doing a great job, because you're right.
They can't do anything.
Don't shoot the messenger. Right, exactly.
Right.
And everyone's at the mercy of what's happening here.
Can they, so let's say a flight was loading and that last passenger got on board before the reservation system went down, that plane would take off, there would be no problem.
They're in the air, yeah.
But if you're halfway through the boarding process,
you're done.
You got to stop.
Because they can't finish the boarding process. They probably can't file the flight plan, as we're hearing. There were issues with entering the flight plans. Yeah. So that plane, if it's in the air, it has its flight plan, everyone's on the manifest, everyone's flying, you're on your way. So it was all about timing this morning. Yeah. That's why I always recommend try to take that early first flight. Right. You might actually get out, because when things do happen, they just back up. And if you're at the end of today, you're probably not going anywhere. So I would be on the phone to your travel agent or United to try to figure out what your next plan is going to be.
What is the airline's responsibility to passengers? In a situation like this, we are seeing obviously disruptions for people. And as you were noting, there could have been other travel plans that were disrupted at the cruise point, cruise destination, that sort of thing. What does the airline have to do? What is their responsibility?
Well, the airline really needs to either refund that fare to the folks who now are booking another fare, but they're not going to make up a difference. They're not going to pay for your cruise if you missed your cruise. They'll talk about how this is almost like a mechanical issue. It's not possible to board you. It's not possible to fly the plane. Therefore, it's out of our hands. But they can't hold you to that non-refundable ticket. They'll have to refund that fare. And there are rules that say you can't leave people. If I can't get you to your final destination within 2 hours domestically, then there are things that can happen in terms of an added benefit to you as an individual if you get bumped, let's say, from a flight. But this really doesn't fall into any specific category, so it's a little gray.
What you've talked about in the past, travel insurance. How would travel insurance help a passenger in a scenario like this?
So it would be called like trip interruption insurance or cancel for any reason insurance. If your cruise ship is now going to leave this afternoon at 4 or 5 p.m., which is typical departures, and you were supposed to fly down to Miami today, you're not getting on that ship unless you were able to book another flight. Now imagine with full flights, you're a family of 4 going on vacation.
Man, that's a lot of
good
money.
luck finding 4 seats, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you weren't quick to act. Because as soon as this went down, the smart travelers were calling travel agents and basically getting out of Dodge.
Yeah.
So you're pretty much stuck. And if you have that insurance, then you can basically get your money back, but you can't get your vacation back. That's the key thing.
So So you're if that cruise leaves or whatever, that's it.
Out.
You're gone. You're not going anywhere.
Man, that's
Now, if you booked through a cruise line's air department on a flight that didn't make it, then the cruise line will do everything they can to get you to that boat, that ship. But you're not going to get there for a day, 2 days, 3 days. But that's how it works when you book through the cruise line's air department with your travel agent or direct. So that's how that works. As opposed to you booking your own air, then you are technically on your own.
We're sitting here with Mark Murphy. He's a travel expert, and we've been talking about some of the things that passengers can do. So in a case Ken has to hit a convention in New Orleans, he's going to, right now Ken says he's going to wait to see what happens.
Right.
Is that really the best thing he should be doing, or are there other options he could explore?
Well, I'd ask Ken if he's called, if he booked through a travel agent, or if he booked it himself. If he did book it himself, has he looked at other carriers that can get him there? Is there an airport he can drive to that might have a nonstop flight? It might be 3 hours away, but think about the time frame. Rent a car, drive to that airport, and get on a plane that's going to get you out of there. I've done that with weather issues. Where there's weather in the Northeast, I might drive south to Dulles and then get out of Dulles because I know Dulles is flying, whereas New York airports might be closed. That's a fair trade-off. Those are the things. And then the question is, what's that fare? Is he going to pay $1,200 a ticket, and he's sitting on a $300 ticket right now, and missing a day at the convention versus spending an extra $900 times 5 guys? We do the math. We say, I'll just, go ahead and sit tight. That's the challenge. So I'd say those are some of the options. And Ken, I guess the question is, what have you done? What have you explored?
Really, all I can say is if we're stuck here overnight, the airport's got a bar, and
you
forgot the third option.
Fraternity brother. Who knew?
That's right. You'll just start the convention there.
You start the convention, exactly. Have your own mini convention.
Back in college.
The Cleveland offshoot.
Yeah,
the Cleveland chapter. Mark, could it all be possible that in some cities and in some airports, the system could come back up and in others not, or is it going to remain?
Based on what we're hearing, it's going to be, it's global. And it looks like the system is back up, but now it's going to be rolling things out. So based on what we're seeing going across the screen, it looks like everything's coming back up, but now it's going to take a good day or so to roll this out. It might even take a little bit longer. Typically, I find that when you have big weather delays and flights are grounded in, let's say, New York airports, that has a ripple effect that takes as long as 72 hours to work its way out.
And you said something earlier. You said that this is part of the contract, if you will, that passengers have with airlines, which is if there are mechanical issues, that's just the risk that you have inherent to air travel. But as Mark Rosenkirk points out, goodwill with customers, customer service. Right. Is there anything that they could do? Could they do something by saying, for example, I'll give you 10,000 miles, 10,000 travel miles, or maybe, give you $100 off on your next flight? Is there anything that they can do to sort of fix this to keep in the good graces of passengers across the country?
You said that with a straight face. I'm just saying.
I know the airlines are not the most generous.
No, I doubt very much they're going to do anything
in
terms of giving anything to any of the passengers.
It'd be a lot of money, right?
Exactly. Not going to happen. And a lot of these passengers, think about it, they're leisure travelers. They fly once or twice a year. That's it. For somebody who's a heavy, frequent traveler, they'll probably do a little bit more for that person. But again, I don't see anything blanket. I don't even see anything really on an individualized basis because they'll say this was out of their hands. It's a software glitch. Things happen. Technology. The great thing is you talk about attitudes of these passengers. two great.
Yeah,
great
great. I mean,
attitudes.
and what else can you do? You
Exactly.
can't yell at anybody. There's nothing.
Yeah.
But I keep thinking about, and this is why it's so great that we're able to talk to some of these passengers, because if you think about the millions of people or the thousands of people, if you will, that are meant to travel today, they each have an individual story.
Right.
They're either going on a convention, or they're going on a cruise, or maybe they're going to go see a long lost relative, whatever it is, and now that's gratification delayed. I mean, it's going to be really tough for some people.
You know, I want to go back to Mark Rosenker, if we have him for a minute, because Mark, as we talk about this, the passenger experience here and the delays really sort of eating into the time that they could be spending with loved ones, how seriously, if at all, does the FAA kind of, or do government officials, do they care about that at all? Because, you know, we'd heard, for instance, a few years ago about passengers being stranded on tarmacs for hours and hours and hours.
And the government steps in and says you can't do that.
Right. Is there anything along those lines when you hear of a glitch like this and perhaps no real sort of mandated kind of compensation necessarily for passengers, is there anything at all that government officials might think about doing to kind of help alleviate some of these stresses for people who do travel?
Mark Murphy, you wanted to add to this.
Yeah, so Mark, one of the things you brought up was those people getting delayed on the tarmacs. What we've seen as a result of that government intervention is proactive canceling of flights. So if there's going to be a weather issue, all of a sudden we're saying, well, the weather hasn't even arrived. What's going on? Why are all these flights being canceled? We don't even know how bad it's going to be. And it's the fear of the airlines suffering fines in the tens of millions of dollars because it adds up to almost $30,000 per passenger on that single plane that's stuck on that tarmac, and it's the law of unintended consequences. So do you have any concerns about that, the government stepping in on an IT glitch and then trying to impose things? Because now all of a sudden things might not be going properly. We've fought through these things before, and next thing you know, we're canceling everything and getting out proactively, and you create even more disruptions.
But if they ended up having additional oversight by virtue of the federal government, we may see some improvement, just as we saw improvement with the performance of the airlines when, in fact, they had these rules to abide by.
All right, but then I'd be concerned because we saw healthcare.gov, right? So that rollout. So I don't know if I want the government doing too much IT stuff, right?
Mark Murphy. I mean, because the fact is, do you think there would be pushback if, in fact, the government tried to make a move to intervene in a situation like that?
Well, I think the airlines want to be profitable, right? They want to keep their planes in the air. So as Mark mentioned, the financial impact's going to be big to United. I mean, really big.
Yeah.
So anytime you have this, it hurts them dramatically financially. So I think they're already incentivized as a private sector business to get your passengers there, get them there safely, keep a good reputation, be proactive, all of those things. What you have is a situation where, you know, Mark mentioned somebody might go from United to, let's say, American or somewhere else. Well, in a lot of cities, you don't really have a choice because it's an oligopoly. You're stuck with United. You're stuck with American. You're stuck with Delta. So you better love your local airline because you don't really have that many choices depending on where you want to fly.
They don't want to jump the gun, right? I mean, you don't want to jump the gun and start boarding passengers when you're not 100% sure that this thing is ready to go. Because the last thing, I think our passengers that we've been speaking to, Ken Wilner in Cleveland and Geraldine Novak in Boise, I think they all seem very calm because you're in the departures area. Ken pointed out there's a bar, no issue. But if you start putting passengers on the plane and it's not ready to go, that's a nightmare, right?
Manage expectations, man. And that's been the big Achilles heel for the airlines. You get to the gate, it says on time, and it's now 5 minutes past departure time, and there's still no plane there, but yet it still says on time. And you say, hello, give me the information. That was part of the Passenger Bill of Rights Act and the things that the airlines need to do to keep you informed. It would be really terrible if they got everybody on board and said, up, head fake, or got to get back off. Then you start having that air rage. But at least it's on the ground.
Yeah, for sure.
So
for sure.
So again, Mark Murphy, what if I'm Ken Wilner and I've just gotten on that plane in Cleveland and I'm thinking, well, that was a disruption and now I'm going to miss such and such and I'm kind of mad about that. What is his recourse, if any?
Nothing. He's going to get to his place and hopefully get there just a few hours later than usual. He knows he's already missed his connection. I'm not sure what his connecting city might be, but I think he said Chicago. So he's connecting through Chicago. So when he gets to Chicago, what happens then? What flight have they rebooked him on? Does he know what he's rebooked on already? Or is he flying blind to Chicago, getting there and hoping when he gets off, the gate agent's going to say, hey, I got great news, you're on the next flight. Or maybe they're going to tell him he's on the flight tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, automatically rebooked in the morning. And now he's got to get a hotel in Chicago. And by the way, he's in the air, so how's he going to book the hotel unless he goes onto Wi-Fi and he gets the email that's, wow. really confusing for the traveler.
Even I'm curious, sometimes you get on a flight and they say, hey, we're having a mechanical issue. We're going to deplane everybody and we're bringing on another plane to take off. Are we going to see something? I don't ever know. Is that a plane they just have standing by? How does that work? And could this work in a situation like this, Mark?
No, because the planes haven't gone anywhere. They're still sitting there. So unless you now get on your plane and have that mechanical issue, then exactly right. They might have an equipment change. But very rarely does that affect you in this instance. I think the biggest issue you can have is what the former head of the NTSB said, Mark, which was that now you have the pilot hours issue. And if you remember a few years ago, they shortened the amount of time pilots could fly within a 24-hour period, as well as other crew members. And that, with a shortage of pilots overall, has created an issue where all of a sudden the flight's not being canceled. The plane's fine. Passengers are ready to go. Everything's set. Sorry, we can't get a pilot to fly the plane.
Right.
Think about that. That's the next thing in this. And I think Mark brought up a great point. A lot of Marks here today, by the way.
There are a lot of them. Because I think what happens ultimately is certain pilots, they may be on the edge of when they're able to fly. What about if they have to turn around crews, like the flight attendants?
Right.
That could be an issue as well.
Exactly. So, and then think about it. That new crew that was going to be flying in didn't show up in time. So now they still have to wait for that new crew to fly in, because a lot of these folks, keep in mind, they may be based out of Newark, but they may live in Cleveland. So that's a serious commute that they do. A lot of airline pilots and flight attendants, et cetera, do exactly that.
Yeah, everybody looks fairly, calm. I mean, again, I think all of us have flown before under high pressure situations. At some point, you just sort of say, look, it is what it is, and I'm not going to be able to do anything. You call ahead to your family members, to your boss, to whoever, and say, I've got this issue, and it's not just me.
Right. And I think the best thing to say is, listen, it's out of your control.
Yeah.
Worry about the things you can control. This is out of your control. Why stress yourself out? You will get where you're going, and then hopefully you've done a good job of planning for these contingencies. Hopefully, if you are taking a cruise, you plan to go down and do a pre-cruise stay, which I always recommend, because you never know. Mechanical flights, connections, weather delays, you name it. So